Hello again and welcome to another Articulate Outburst podcast. We're going through song inspiration and the kind of subjects that immediately kind of beep a radar screen to me for inspiration, and you kind of can build a character around said inspiration in this instance, and that's turning our ire to our critics. We're often shouted down because the whole idea behind the band was to reinvent punk for today, i.e. the old anarchy in the UK, tear down the government, etc. Having had its place back in the original kind of evolution of punk and the kind of, when we believed Parliament was the power centre before things shifted. Our kind of punk rock is based in the here and now, very much in the 21st century. Still very much based in the working class, and oddly enough we got a little bit of flack for one of our podcasts the other week being claimed to be far right, and obviously gammon was thrown about, which was not exactly the intended response when I sent them the song that I'd written 3 years ago for an argument that we're going to walk into, entitled Gammon. It's one of our best songs, certainly a working class anthem. And what I found now is, particularly within the working class and the critics, which is, I've got to say, kind of has evolved quite a lot of our songs, from Snowflake, Repeat Offender. If you can kind of go back through our first album and see that it's appealing to one particular type of person. And what we've got within the working class is we've got the working class, i.e. the people that go to work, get up, go to work, and hang around with other people of the same kind of ilk. But we've also got a working class that becomes a bit like I don't want to be too derogatory to Guardian readers, because I used to read The Guardian in the 1980s and probably fell into that category then. But you've got also a working class that's encapsulated by a left-wing dogma that almost looks down on the working class, referring to them as gammon, knuckle draggers, and forgetting that ultimately, it's the working class that this country's shoulders are built on, certainly in tax, because as a percentage of the population we get taxed the most. And obviously from a working class point of view, we see the world in the kind of the ways in which, not the idealism that people would want to kind of purport this society is, but the gritty realism that we see on the day-to-day. We see that there's certain things being blown out of all proportion that we just know are not real, such as climate emergency. And then I was accused of being far right for having a position on the green agenda, as if left or right wing determines whether you believe the ecosystem bull or the fact that nothing's really changed. It's a planet and we can't interfere with its rotation and its climate. The majority of, and obviously from that point of view. So I found myself in a debate with somebody that was trying to claim that we weren't punk but was backing media such as the BBC in an awfully difficult, contradictory position. And then shouting at people that I consider to be quite thoughtful and quite all encapsulating with a lot of their argument. I don't agree with everything they say, but they at least ask the questions that need to be asked, and was accused a misogynist and racist, as if you disagree with climate change, then by definition you're the other two. So I really wanted to kind of get into this topic a little bit more, because obviously our critics, I could have hit him with many songs that we've sang that applied to them, and they couldn't see the irony in that a song I wrote 3 years ago was an answer to an argument last week. And I really can't square the circle on why somebody who doesn't agree with climate change is right-wing, because that's just a scientific view, that's not a political preference. Political preference has a tendency to kind of be more society-based, evening things out, where there's somebody getting away with something, you try to level it, bring in laws, influence society, try to even up the score. I don't really see how climate science has even a left or a right-wing position. It was very interesting for me to be kind of called out on this. There were a lot of also around insults backwards and forwards, and it kind of went on a bit, and free speech, but only if you're going to have free speech to promote hate speech. It's like, well, you've either got free speech or you haven't. You can't have free speech, but you've either got one or the other. So this kind of like turns to our critics that this stream is basically, although I don't think they deserve the right of reply, I'm very interested to kind of explore how they've formed this view over time. That somebody who attacks the real power structures in the world, such as BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, and the kind of big money power centres, and the NGOs, the Tony Blair Foundation, where real power is influencing government and things on the ground, how there's an entire generation of people that have missed that still believe that Parliament is sovereign, still believe that Parliament makes the decisions and we the people are sovereign, when for quite some time now I don't think that's been the case. So what we've kind of done as a punk band is we've kind of leapfrogged politics to kind of attack the structures of power, and in that way it's somehow cascaded down as being far right, when technically speaking we've just lifted up the veil and see the world as it clearly is, and you can kind of see that certain things don't make any sense anymore. Politicians are almost the shills of big business and the shills of other people, and they've kind of let go of society. I feel at this moment in time we're kind of running down the train tracks, and the government back maybe even 10 years ago might just correct the traffic a little bit on that road, but they're not really doing that anymore, and we just seem to be completely out of control. The borders have gone, and I know that all this rubbish that they're throwing about this floating prison ship effectively that they want to put them on, they could make a rule tomorrow that it's illegal. If you come to England in an illegal way, you will never ever be a British citizen, and they could do that tomorrow with an 80-seat majority. They're choosing not to do that. They want them here, and I suspect it's for digital IDs and passports, digital health certificates, or some other nefarious reason, because nothing else explains their actions. And all of a sudden this is now interpreted as far right and in some way derogatory to those poor folk who are basically the tools, or they are the lever. And it's this kind of a lack of an education now from many people who kind of take things out of context, draw the wrong conclusion and start chucking bombs about you being far right. Not seeing that very play, not seeing that this is being used for a bigger game, that the COVID vaccines, the whole COVID thing might not have been intended, but certainly people benefited on the back of it. Look what Pfizer have managed to get out of this. Look what Moderna have managed to get out of this. Johnson & Johnson not so lucky. And you kind of look now in hindsight, looking back, to think, well, our government weren't really calling the shots. The experts were, and the experts are the paid shills of the people that benefited from it. So all of a sudden you can realise how easy it is to hoodwink a politician, peddle fear, then they're just doing their civic duty with the only news they've got, which is the people that are telling them, the scientists who pay their wages. So a complete conflict of interests. And it's this that I see as the new punk, attacking what really matters and the real kind of power structures up there, not the government, or just merely the managerial class that haven't had a unique good idea in the last 10 to 15 for my money. And not to see how this is playing out across society, I find that they've denigrated their duty. I love a good debate and I love a good bit of challenge. And then when I did, to a certain extent, concede one point that they were making, but asked for more information on the other, to say, look, you would have to be specific if I am to take this seriously, then all of a sudden you get nothing back. It's like you've made your point, you've conceded a little bit, you've then asked for a specific on something else, and then all of a sudden it's almost like the point is made. So they feel their point is made and that's the end of it. And I'm thinking, no, you still have to come back with this. But then it gets tiresome with the pinging and ponging, especially on public platforms. So yeah, so this is this is where I get a lot of my inspiration from with the critics, the contradictions that you kind of find, that nobody seems to sing one song. Nobody. I was speaking only in the pub yesterday to a dear friend of mine that always says the same thing. Always prepared to have his ideas changed. Always prepared, once new evidence comes to light, to change their mind. And we're both of exactly that same mindset that many of our critics are not. They've got a fixed view of the world. They certainly don't want any truth bombs dropping. You start handing out the red pills. They don't want to know. They don't really want to know how far down the rabbit hole it goes. And I find that a bit of a shame, really, because I'd like to develop more of these people, because the less of us that believe the government narrative, the less of us that believe the way in which the world's going, the better it is for all of us. Because you just knew, and I wanted to say, and I know this is going to sound awful and condescending, but I knew he were triple jabbed, and I knew he'd have a Ukrainian flag hanging somewhere up in his house. And that's a terrible thing to say, that you kind of already know what you're kind of dealing with. It's like literally I was in a room of the triple jabbed, those that fell for all the tricks, and even now buying the fact that Ukraine is some way going to beat Russia. It's like a dwarf kicking a giant's toe. You just think to yourself, how have they been conned? Why can they not see through this veil? It's actually a lyric in a song that we're writing. How can I see through the veil? It's I cannot see it any other way is a song, and that'll probably be on album 3. We're so far behind, well, not so far behind, album 2's practically written. I'm working on a concept for album 3, which might be an EP. And we're in the recording studio in November, so we're going to have some new material for you all to listen to. And in the meantime, on this stream, I'm going to put on a few practice videos to show what it's like working at the coalface. I'm also proposing in the future to talk about gigs, getting gigs, working with promoters, working with outlets, because everyone would think that this would be a seamless thing. You can play, people will book you, but there's a whole myriad of issues between that and actually getting on stage in front of a paying audience. But that's a separate stream on its own. So again, inspirations are critics of us drive that inspiration and really kind of alter me thinking in the way in which we become a much better band as a result. And that's not pandering to their claims, that's not even overcoming their objections. But what it is doing is, in a way, picking the language within the song in order to kind of make the point a little bit better than perhaps we have been making, to see if we can swing those people round. I think it's in another one of our songs, that and if we always disagree, then that should really bind us. Preaching to the converted will only seek to divide us. And that's, I think, repeat offender. That's to prevent, this constant offence thing, which I think I'd obviously tripwired into, but not through any intention or fault. And again, just by somebody taking something out of context and not listening to the whole thing. But it's more for us, more material, absolutely love it. But I just thought I'd interject there with a little bit more about what inspires us. Our critics are perhaps our best springboard for ideas. So keep bringing your crap my way. I love it. And on occasion, I'm sure we'll get on and you'll come to a gig and we'll have a beer over it. That is always an option from me. Nothing that can't be discussed and solved over a beer, especially at a gig. But that's enough for this week. Thanks very much for listening. If you could ring the bell, press it so that it notifies you of all updates, not personalised. Ring the bell, like the video, share it as wide as you can. Thank you for all the emails, thank you for all the discussions, thanks for all the grief. It's always nice, good and bad, suit me equally. And I'll see you in the next stream. But thanks very much, thanks for listening and thanks for all your support. We've got some gigs coming up, 29th of August. We're at the Hyde Park Book Club. That's coming up in about, this stream might have actually gone out. No, 29th of August, no, this stream will go out on the Thursday. I'll get my dates right. Yeah, this stream will go out before the gig. So yeah, come down and support us, 29th of August, Hyde Park Book Club in Leeds. Yeah, and thanks for listening. thanks for giving me your attention, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.